The home buying process can be very overwhelming. However, our experienced team is here to help walk you through every step of the way. I am Lauren, and this is the one and only Raul with the Schrader Group. And today we are going to be how you doing? And today we are going to be talking about the steps when purchasing a home. All right, I'm a first-time home buyer. Where do I start?
Well, first we got to figure out how much house you could buy, right? Because, we all get the idea of I want a two-story, one-story, I want to live on this side of town or that side of town. But without actually knowing what our wallet's going to allow us to buy, we need to kind of get the first steps and see how much we can afford and see what's comfortable and kind of work backwards, right?
Right, so I guess that would go into the pre-approval process?
Absolutely. So when we get into the pre-approval, we're going to know exactly what our finances look like, what our debt-to-income ratios are, and then we're able to find out what that budget's going to be. Because I think here in San Antonio, we're a very budget-friendly town, so we want to buy payments rather than mortgages. Because people say, I want to buy this house, but then they see the math on it, like, ooh, that might be a little bit too much. Or they might be able to stretch their budget a little bit.
Okay, so then once they know, how do you go about searching for the home?
Sure. So depending on what we're looking at, we'll get their must-haves or wants, and then what
their wish list.
Exactly. We'll put that all down. Then we'll create a search, and then it'll be like a drip campaign. Just normally I set them up twice a day. That way, if anything new pops up, they're able to get first crack at it. But we look through it, and once they start seeing something that they do like, then we start scheduling appointments, go out there, and then I explain what's good about this house, what I would maybe stay away from. Maybe it has a whole bunch of deferred maintenance, or maybe, that foundation's been moving a little bit and kind of point them in the right direction.
So once they find their home that they want to make an offer on, How does that work?
Sure. So once we do that, they say, okay, we want to go ahead and give the green light. What I'll do is I'll do a comparable market analysis, which basically breaks down what the neighborhood's yielding as far as sales prices, price per foot, one story, two story. See, the history of the home. That way we can make a competitive, offer, because my job's also to save money and get the best deal, as possible.
Yes.
But once we do that, we kind of plug in all the, the key factors. Who's paying title? Do we need any home warranties? Do we need seller concessions? Because right now we live in a world where interest rates are dictating what we're paying monthly, and sometimes we need some more concessions just to get us to the finish line. And that's a negotiable that we're seeing right now in our market, where sellers are actually coming to the table wanting to help our buyers out.
Good. So then once they get under contract, there's something called the option period.
Absolutely. So I like to call the option period the due diligence period, right? To go in and figure out what's going on with the home. During that time, we have either 7-10 days is kind of the industry standard. Here in San Antonio, it's about $10 to $20 a day, so anywhere between $70 to $100 or $140 to $200. And what that does is it gives the buyer unrestricted access to walk away at any given time without losing their earnest money. Okay. So normally during that period, we'll go ahead and set up the inspections. Then we'll evaluate the inspection report. And if there's anything on that report that we might need to do a little bit more, for example, there's a couple of shingles that are missing, some flashing on the roof is a little bit off. We would want to get a licensed roofer out there just to get an idea of what's really going on, because we could say fix X, Y, and Z, but if the problem's a little deeper, we would rather know for our buyers, because I don't want them to walk into a situation where they got to, buy a new roof within 3 months. That just doesn't make sense. But we negotiate whatever repairs we find, and sometimes it's in the form of credits, like seller concessions, where they just don't want to do any repairs, give us cash for those repairs, or we just request that all these items be done by licensed professionals 3 or 4 days before we actually close on the home.
So when the inspector comes, that has to be done within the option period?
Yes, typically, because what ends up happening is if we don't have them there during, then we've already agreed and we're outside of our options. So now our earnest money's up for grabs.
I see.
So we definitely want to get the inspector there as soon as possible. That way we're able to see what our liabilities are.
Okay, and then what about title? You hear title a lot.
Yeah, so there's two parts of title, right? There's a title commitment and then a title policy. The title commitment is basically the title company saying, we've looked at the home, we've researched it, and there's a couple liens and some, judgments or whatnot. These have to be solidified before a title policy could be, initiated. And the difference is the commitment saying the title company will step up as long as you meet X, Y, and Z. And the policy is something saying that from the day that you close as a buyer, you are no longer responsible for what happened in the past. So ultimately the lender's saying, okay, from here on out, we're good. The buyer's secure. Let's go ahead and move forward.
And what about the appraisal?
Yeah, so the appraisal typically will take place right after we've agreed outside of the option period. So say like we agree to terms, repairs, whatever it was, then the option period expires. At that point, we typically order the appraisal, because we don't want the buyer to pay for an inspection and then items not be there and have the appraisal ordered, because 450 here, 550 here. They got to pay for all these things. So
Right.
if we're not positive we're moving forward, I'd like to keep that in our back pocket just to make sure. Have it scheduled, but not actually perform, because regardless of what happens, we got to pay for that appraisal. If,
Right.
if the seller doesn't want to do any repairs, or they're big repairs that we won't buy the house if they don't get done, then we've already paid for the appraisal and the inspection, and we're out of the house.
And so what if it does not appraise?
So there's options. There's three things that typically happen. Number one, we pay the full difference, right? So we go up. Number two, the seller comes down, or 9 times out of 10, we kind of find a common ground to see where we're at. But as the market changes, we're starting to see that the sellers are getting a little bit more, not lucrative, but they're getting a little bit more on that playing field of, okay, how do we get this deal done? So at this point, I think people are being a little bit more conservative on the appraisal side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unlikely to see that happen.
Okay. And then once we get past appraisal is what, the final walkthrough?
Yeah, so once we get the appraisal back, we've already done the inspection. We've probably gone back to the house to see if all the repairs have been done, make sure all the receipts match out. In the meantime, we're working with the lender to make sure all our goals or the deadlines are in place. Once the appraisal comes back, it's almost like our good faith saying, okay, we've checked that last box. There's no more requirements based on what needs to happen before we close. And then the appraisal is basically our green light to say, okay, all our conditions have been met. Granted that there's nothing else that we have to provide, and then we are able to simplify and get into that closing process to where we actually get to that table.
And then it's closing day.
Then it's closing day.
So
yes.
what would a first-time home buyer need to bring besides champagne to celebrate?
That's a good one right there. So on closing day, typically maybe the day before, they'll wire the funds to the title company. We don't recommend doing a check or a cashier's check, only for the fact that there's normally a hold, 24 to 48 hours hold on those checks. So if we want to try to get the keys same day, which for first-time home buyers, I always want to try to do that because it's very emotional, it's very fun, and it's an experience, and that's what we're all about, creating that experience. But typically we go to the closing table and we have 2 forms of ID. And basically just warm up your hands because you're gonna be signing for a little while. There's about 60 to 80 pages. After that, we take a nice picture, make sure everything's good, get the keys, and welcome them into their new home.
That is so exciting. Yeah. Last question: Who would you say who pays for the buyer's agent when representing?
Yeah, great question. Actually, that's a question most people forget about. So in Texas, it's normal that the seller pays the buyer's agent side. So in essence, the buyer's getting representation that they don't have to pay for because the seller on the other side is covering them. And that works for new homes as well. So a lot of people think that they don't need an agent or whatnot. But the truth of the matter is the agent actually facilitates and helps you get from A to B and get you through the whole entire process. And when we get through it, builders would rather pay an agent to be on the other side to help out with the whole transaction, make sure that their buyers are informed and know what's going on. But it's typically always the sellers. Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of really good information. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in closing, the home buying process can bring a lot of different emotions, but once you get into the home, you can make so many memories with your family. It's totally worth it. Please reach out if you have any questions or subscribe to our channel to learn more real estate tips.
Thank you very much. You have a blessed day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.